somebody who's much more experienced in the system, and I said, why am I crying when we have these group meditations? I'm not a very cry-y sort of person,
Yes.
you know. And he said, I'm really happy to hear that. Your heart is opening.
Yeah.
And I could believe that. My oldest friend, my dearest friend down in England, Rosalind, she was already practicing in Heartfulness. And she just very gently said, would you like to try this? And she completely respected my wish to continue with, you know, lighting incense and so for a whole, and I did, so she gave me these introductory meditations, the introductory sittings.
Yes.
And for about a year, I kind of ran the two practices in parallel, which, you know, a lot of people say it's not a very good idea, you know. And she never put any pressure on me to let go of a practice and a way of being and a set of beliefs that, you know, I had so much respect for.
Yes.
And so very, very gradually, it just gradually dropped away as I realized the, you know, the potency of this particular approach.
Yes.
And how to not have that ritual, but to just be able to be really still and to know that this transmission, you know, was actually changing me at a kind of cellular level inside.
I think it's quite a common experience that people who have that sense of longing and that sense of searching, when they start heartfulness, the searching stops, because it's not like a conscious understanding, oh, I found what I was searching for. It's not like that at all, but it just feels like there's no need to search anymore because I have what I need.
Yes, and I don't even think that we find it. I think it finds, you know, the management department is busy saying, you know, is she ready yet? You know, all that kind of rebelliousness and so, you know, is she ready for this? This is my imagination, of course. But there's something very, I think, very precise about timing for the management department.
Yes.
And that when I'm saying they, you know, how do I know?
Personifying.
When there's some way in which you're ready, what you need, I'm sure, comes.
Yes.
And is offered to you. You still have the possibility of not seeing it, of not being ready, of not saying yes to something. And, you know, my yes at the beginning wasn't, you know, it wasn't like oh, this is it. It really wasn't like that.
More subtle.
Well, and also quite grumpy.
Right.
Yeah, when I first met Chai, when I went to Denmark, there was I had started, you know, the sittings, I had started doing that. But I hadn't met the guide, the spiritual guide, and I had no particular desire to either. I couldn't really see the point.
Yes.
And I was very wary of an Indian guru. What did it have to do with me? And, you know, all of us in the West have read so many stories about, you know, gurus who take advantage of people.
Yes.
So I was extremely wary.
Yeah.
However, I thought, okay, well, I'll go. So I went to this seminar in the meditation center in Denmark. And just thought, what are all these people doing, following this man? I'm not going to be a groupie. You know, this isn't for me. You know, all this, you know, all this reverence sort of thing. Not everybody was like that, because it was also extremely warm and welcoming, and people were, you know, light and cheerful, and that's impressive too, when people are cheerful and not, you know. But I didn't want to be part of some sort of following.
Yes.
So I was quite grumpy about it. However, as well as being grumpy, I found that, much to my dismay, when we had a meditation, the tears would come.
Aha.
And you know, it's like, what is, you know, what is all this, you know? You know, I went to somebody who's much more experienced in the system, and I said, why am I crying when we have these group meditations? I'm not a very cry-y sort of person, you know. And he said, I'm really happy to hear that. Your heart is opening.
Yeah.
And I could believe that, at the same time as thinking, I don't know about this system. You know. Anyway, I went back and still was unsure about it. And then Chariji was going to London for another seminar, and Rosalind said, "Why don't you come down?" I said, "Nah, I've tried it. I don't think." But I found myself on a train going down to London, you know. I didn't make any great efforts to rush to the hall and to where he was and where the sittings were happening. I wasn't, you know. So I took my own time, had a nice cup of coffee, and rocked up a bit later and he was on the stage and he was giving a talk. Now, this is the bit which is really weird, because these things don't happen to me.
Yeah.
That I walk into the hall, and I look at him, and inside, very clearly, a little voice said, "This is your master."
Gosh.
And different tears came this time, you know, and that, you know, I've always remembered that moment.
Master mean to you? Because a lot of people in the West, this word master is a strange concept, and most people will just think, you know, in the way you were thinking when you saw him the first time, with all people following around, potentially taking advantage. What did that mean to you, "He's my master," at that time?
I think it was this recognition that in something like a spiritual journey, how the heck could you ever imagine you could do it alone? Mm. How could you ever imagine that you would be able to dissolve your ego to such an extent, you know, that you could in some way merge with the divine condition? And realizing that we need somebody who's walked the path before us, who knows the pitfalls of the ego and has the capacity to do something about that. Mm. You know, that the system and the wisdom and the nature of this being, who is human and also has the power of the divine. For me, it meant that there was an absolute certainty that as long as I could follow, that there was a pretty good chance I might get to where I'm intended to go. And in the same way that, you know, if I'm going to learn something new, I'm not going to imagine I can do it by myself. You know. And when I was not trusting, you know, at the beginning, I thought, I'm going to test this system. I'm going to test this so-called master in my own way. I did, and I really looked carefully to see, could I see corruption? You know, could I see a double life? And I could not. I saw an absolutely transparent life of extraordinary service and sacrifice and love.